All right, let's get started. My name is Tino Hells. I work with BTI in security integration, design, and marketing. And I want to welcome you all and thank you for taking the time to be with us today. The topic we're diving into is not just timely, but also transformative, cutting edge ways to streamline and automate customer interaction using hyperautomation and AI. First up is our host, Eric Brackett, founder and president of BTI Communications Group. Over to you, Eric.
Well, thank you, Tino. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We appreciate you being here, and we're looking forward to sharing some insightful information and ways that you can transform your customer experience and improve your profitability. I'm Eric Brackett. I'm the founder and president of BTI, and I'm going to introduce or turn this over to Mike Rapp from IntelliPeer, who's a senior VP. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Eric. Uh, Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As Eric mentioned, my name is Mike Rapp with IntelliPeer. I lead our account management organization that really works with our partners and customers to maximize their investments with IntelliPeer, really focused on applying automation. Just a little bit background on myself. I've been in the contact center technology arena for probably almost 25 years, with a real big focus over the last 13 years on how to apply conversational and now generative AI to delivering automation solutions and improving CX. So, happy to be here. So today we've kind of broken our discussion into three areas. First is, or chapters. The first is kind of setting a baseline of understanding communications in AI. Chapter two is where AI fits into the enterprise and how to go about doing that. And then chapter three, finally, which is probably the most important part of the discussion, is determining what to automate. And we'll talk about some ways to get started. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our first topic here, which is understanding communications in AI. I will say, certainly 23 has been a very interesting year in the world of artificial intelligence and buzz, right? Everyone has heard about ChatGPT, and all the different applications from students using it to write papers to practical uses. And so we'll talk about here a little bit is kind of what not specifically ChatGPT, but how to apply automation and what it means to the business and enterprise. So if we bring it down to kind of businesses, right, spend on AI and investments in AI in the enterprise is both, expected to reach, over 300 billion by 2026. And, that's great and all, but really, what does that mean to organizations? So in the area of customer contact centers and customer service, there's some statistics out here, one from Gardner, reducing agent costs or contact center labor costs by 80 billion by 2026. And another statistics here by Servian Global Services that AI could automate up to 40% of customer service tasks. So really, it's all about how can we apply automation to impact your business, and we'll talk a little bit about not only the customer care contact center side, but we'll also talk about enterprise workers as well. But to get started, we figured we'd talk a little bit about kind of where are some areas that we experience AI today. So I'll turn this over to Eric to kind of walk through a few examples.
Yeah, so we commonly experience this in our personal lives with our healthcare providers today. It's very prevalent uh, for example, patient appointment reminders. We experience it in our phone systems to not generative AI usually, but we experience some sort of AI with our phone systems in terms of the intelligent decisions that phone systems make about routing calls and about how to handle reporting and even transcribing calls. Obviously, every Amazon order for a long time has been involved AI, and we've seen some companies that started from scratch that never did anything but AI. They never had a phone or any sort of customer service, and that's fine for some industries, but there are other industries where we're going to talk about where we need that human interaction and maybe a blend. And obviously all two-factor authentication when we use our banking and financial accounts for security purposes. We're interacting normally with AI because AI does a better job of validating that we are who we are in many cases than a human could.
Yeah, those are great examples. One additional one I'll throw out there that we kind of commonly run into that, is really on the generative side. So like natural language generation is if you're texting or if you're using Google Mail or even Microsoft now in some cases where it's auto suggesting what you can write or what the next suggested word would be. And that's using language generation, which is a big part of what we'll talk about with some of the power of generative AI. So it is everywhere. Obviously, a common another one is our countertop devices, be it an Alexa, of course, Google's versions, Samsung's versions. Those are great examples. So it's everywhere in our own personal lives. So as we think about this and think about, all right, well, where does it fit into them? One of the key areas, and when we think about automation, certainly is the contact center, right? Contact centers have been naturally a target for automation because the cost of human labor to answer contact center calls is expensive. Even if you're offshoring with a BPO, it's still probably one of the most expensive parts of a contact center operation. So when we look at kind of the art of possible with generative AI combined with conversational AI, we think there's a huge opportunity to really take automation in the contact center up to 70, 80, 90% or more, right? The other area that we think is a huge, we'll call it white space for applying automation is with enterprise workers. So think about bank branches, think about retail locations where calls are coming in and out or chats are coming in and out of those communications. And a lot of that's not automated today. Even as something as simple as if you have employees communicating to patients or or customers or prospects via their personal cell devices or even an enterprise provided phone and they're texting. All that communication is decentralized and not controlled. The ability to apply AI and centralize that and put automation and reporting and insights just into that example is very powerful. And so, the net of this is automation obviously can be applied to really expand your savings and impact in the contact center, but also, impact and help the enterprise workers. Eric, anything to add in this area?
Well, just that this is a very exciting technology, and the ability to overlay this in the cloud securely is, I think an incredible opportunity for our customers.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point. What it actually leads nicely to what we have next, right? So a lot of different people are out there providing automation. One of the key things that we're doing with IntelliPeer with our smart automation platform is we're fitting it into your existing ecosystem, meaning it sits on top in the cloud, in front of your contact center platform, in front of your UC or enterprise worker platform. Doesn't matter whether those are on premise or in the cloud themselves. But the goal in how we apply our automation platform is we have an orchestration workflow tool that leverages a best of breed AI across, Google Dialogflow, OpenAI and Azure for generative, IBM Watson, Lex. But the idea is we're trying to either in an inbound or outbound engagement, we are trying to automate an interaction so a human doesn't have to do it. And that's really where we apply our technology and orchestration platform. And we're not trying to replace your contact center. We're not trying to replace the unified collaboration system, but we sit in and around those existing platforms. We'll talk about how we would leverage data from your CRM and knowledge bases and other things to really orchestrate automation within the enterprise. And of course, when you think about automation and handling customer data, it's critical that things like HIPAA compliance, SOC 2 Type 2 PCI all come into play when you're applying automation. And obviously those are things that we have at IntelliPeer as part of our platform. And we take that security and guarding your customers' data very, very importantly as we go along. Yep. So as we transition, kind of talk about where we can fit into your existing ecosystem, let's talk about a little bit of the power of AI, because AI has been around for a while, right? We talked about some of the examples that Eric gave earlier, right? Those have been around for a while, right? In conversational AI, or even before that, directed speech, ASR, automated speech recognition, have been around for a couple of decades. But obviously technologies continue to evolve, and kind of the latest iteration or evolution has really been around what's been packaged up as generative AI, which includes kind of natural language understanding, which is understanding the meaning of what you say or type, with natural language generation, which is actually generating responses, right? And that ability to apply generative AI in concert with conversational AI that's been around for around a decade it really changes the art of possible. So when we think about a typical contact center and you think about a self-service IVR or intelligent virtual assistant, depending on the industry, you were talking about an automation rate of 30, 40, maybe best in class 50, 60%. And really focused on what we would consider transactional type of items, making a payment, what's your order status, maybe playing a balance, maybe ID and authenticating your account. With generative AI, what we really can do is get into more of those question and answer things, right? If you think about a contact center or even enterprise worker, what they're doing in a lot of cases is they're getting a question from somebody. They're looking at the CRM system, their knowledge documents, their knowledge base, and they're answering those questions. And so part of the power of generative AI is we can understand the question. We can, in a securely fashion, leverage the data that would answer that question, and use generative AI to answer the question using the data provided. And a key thing to talk about is we're not going to be using the internet with generative AI to answer these questions, because that's not reliable, but we'll actually use the understanding of what the person says or provides in the chat. We'll take the data that's securely integrated from the customer and use that to answer the question. But really what that does is it changes the world in terms of the art of possible of what types of things we can apply AI to. Some examples might be applying AI to an outbound lead for qualification, for data collection, for more, we'll call it intelligent, frequently asked questions, not static, but frequently asked questions that can be answered, right? So think of an example in a traditional IVR, you might be able to provide the balance due on a bill, but you would probably fall short if you tried to answer a question on that bill. Why is my bill $20 higher this month, right? That would usually historically have to go to an agent. Leveraging the power of generative AI, we could understand the intent, take a look at the bill, understand the differences in charges, and answer that question intelligently. Of course, it's important to do all this securely and with guardrails, and obviously those are key considerations as we look forward. So Eric, any thoughts? We're really excited about what we're doing with our customers and kind of really changing the horizon of where we can go with automation. But obviously you guys you're out there and working with different customers as well. I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I think it's this is where things are going. This is how business is going to be done. And I think our customers, historically have always struggled with staffing, training, accuracy, quality management, workforce automation. When you add up the cost of all the things that go into just putting an agent in a seat to intelligently answer a question, and securely answer it and make a record of what was said and what was done and update the database and so on and so forth, it's a tremendous cost. And I think looking at it from that standpoint, our customers are very excited about being able to save some of those costs in some cases, and in some cases, just generally improve their operation, not necessarily saving human capital costs, but saving time so that their human element can do a better job, and so they have more time to train and higher quality experience.
Yeah, those are interesting points, right? When we think about the benefits of applying AI, a lot of times it might lead to cost savings in terms of kind of the default. But a big part of this is also customer experience or employee experience or member experience or patient experience. Yeah, I'll give a simple example, right? I remember when I joined IntelliPure a couple of years ago, um, I had to change insurances. And so, I was a good patient and I went into the Epic portal for the my chart for my provider, went in, put in my new information, and then I went for my annual physical and I got this bill, right? And I'm like, well, they charge it to my old insurance. So then I called up and, I get my menu, or I listen to, 4 or 5 options and all right, you know, add administration. So I press 5 or 6 or whatever it is. I end up talking to a person. So, hey, I went and updated my insurance in the portal. And the lady on the phone started laughing because she's like, yeah, I don't know why they have that in there because it doesn't work, right? You actually have to call in to change it, right? So think about that experience, right? Where I could, if I would have known that I had to call in, that's something I can automate. But two, just thinking about the experience where I tried to use self-service, it failed. I had to then navigate, pick up the phone and go. So there's a lot of areas where applying automation can improve the experience because even when you use humans today, it can be disjointed. The other part, another example is when we talk to customers out there, it's staggering, even, where we are today, contact centers, a lot of contact centers are short staffed, right? They have high attrition, 10, 15, 20% or higher, monthly annual attrition within the contact center, and or they can't fill the seats that they have to do. And so, being able to apply automation to, automate those things and really focus your human talent on those higher value activities. So it's really kind of that balance of providing more predictive productivity, savings, reshaping the customer experience. Another common example that I use with automation is how many times have we called into our bank, an airline, whatever the case might be, we've played with the IVR, either pressing the menus, or if they've got a speech system enabled, we gave an answer, right? And then we get to the human agent and we start from scratch, right? Who am I talking to? Why are you calling? Right. Well, why did I spend all that time attempting to engage? Right. So it's not only important to implement the automation, but it's important that you implement in a way that is thinking of CX, customer experience, member experience, patient experience as you're applying it. So if you think about across, AI can really be applied across any industry, right? We're working with, organizations across all these industries: healthcare, retail, finance, education, utilities. And, we don't have nearly enough time today to really dig in detail across all these industries and where are some of the examples that we've been applying AI. And I think that's one of the things that we're going to follow up with as a leave behind, is a document that kind of drills into some use cases. But we thought we would start today just as an example using healthcare. Healthcare faces, many unique challenges, let alone, staffing from contact centers for billing. But it's a very, contact and confirmation heavy type thing. And so anything from appointment scheduling, rescheduling appointments. I gave the example of updating my insurance, post-treatment, any result notifications, claims. We're actually working with some radiology testing facilities, making sure appointments get scheduled, that they have the right information before they show up to the appointment. They know where to go, what things they have to do. Don't eat for the 8 hours beforehand, just coffee in the morning. There's a lot of things where There's a lot of manual steps and handoffs between, the provider, the insurance company, the patient, the caregivers for the patient, and there's a lot of opportunities to leverage automation throughout that patient life cycle. So this is actually, probably not traditionally a contact center environment, although, hospitals and provider networks certainly do have contact centers, but they're usually focused on, billing and those types of activities. But, think about the providers at all the locations, the front desk, and there's a lot of opportunities for automation there. I know, Eric, this is a topic we were talking about as we were preparing for the webinar here today. So, I know you have some insights to share on top of this as well for healthcare.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, from a personal experience with my with my children and my own medical care, I completely agree with you. The number of times that, for example, a bill is generated and then has to be regenerated and resent in the mail, and for security purposes, these things have to be HIPAA compliant, and they're very regulated and siloed. So it's very seldom that in my personal contact with anyone in a healthcare environment that the agent was even able to solve the problem, right? It always was me explaining what the problem was and them saying, well, we'll get back to you once we've resubmitted this or resubmitted that. And the amount of time that it took for both me and the agent for each of those interactions was very long and wasteful, because in the end, the same mechanical process had to happen each time. So every example, I think probably everyone on this call, especially with all the changes in healthcare and healthcare regulations since really 2008, can probably empathize with the difficulties of navigating the healthcare system. From a business standpoint, servicing these clients that deliver healthcare, I can tell you also that their biggest management challenge is making sure that all the constituents, the providers, the referring physicians, the contact center workers, the administrators, aren't getting too much blowback from all that confusion. And by blowback, I mean complaints from patients, negative reviews. These things in today's world are top of mind in a competitive healthcare environment, and so there's no shortage of interest in improving the billing and the scheduling and the patient experience. And to the extent that these technologies can be used that way, why they should, number one. And number two, I think from a business perspective, everyone will want to take a look and see how they can use it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously key to delivering any sort of automation and patient experience in healthcare is tying into the EMRs, EHRs, Epic, and others, right? So obviously that's a key part of delivery there. Okay, so that kind of establishes a starting baseline, kind of about automation, where it fits in, talking about, applying it in the contact center and the enterprise. So we're going to talk a little bit now about implementing, AI into your business. And so what we wanted to start with is a little bit of description of kind of what's changed and what's really being enabled by generative AI. So one of the key things, that is really changing is the time to implementation, right? So with conversational AI and before, a lot of times there was a big upfront implementation cycle, 6 to 12 plus months before you would get the outcomes and results. With generative AI, we can get to those first outcomes in 90 days or less, right? It's really because generative AI can, streamline and skip some of the steps relative to implementation of those conversational experiences. Because of that, it also has the benefit of aligning the spend to when the value is realized. And what I mean by that is historically, you would have 6-figure or even more upfront investments in either licenses, professional services fees. And now with, managed services and software as a service combined with, generative AI, your spend on the platform and the managed services is more aligned to when you're getting the value, right? Which is key, right? So you're talking about break even or better savings within 3 to 6 months, and then starting to save within the same budget cycle. That really changes what it looks like to apply these technologies in the space. But the other big piece is because of all this, right, all these factors, it leads to a quicker ROI, but also a larger ROI. And the larger ROI is really prevalent to the lesser upfront cost, but more on when I talk about where we can apply the automation. It's not just, we'll call it some of the historical transaction areas. It's really more of these more Q&A heavy topics, right? So, not just linear transactions, something like a payment that's very structured, right? Where it could be more of a dynamic dialogue and activity, collecting information, asking questions, answering questions in terms of engaging. So it's really changed the world in terms of what it takes and improves this. I would say the accessibility of this capability. I know, Eric, that's a big thing. We were talking about it as well as, who can start applying this now that maybe couldn't before.
It really is. In the past, before
I don't know,
these
Eric,
types of,
yep.
yeah, in the past, these types of projects would have involved, a tremendous amount of custom development and integration and thought and planning, and plenty of room for failure, right? The longer the lead time is to get something up and running, the more exhausted the people involved in the project become, and the less interested they become in the outcome, and the more likely that other priorities jump up and distract them. So this is, we've been doing this for 35 years, and in our experience, these projects always have a lot of risk. These, if you look at the right side of Mike's slide, this is de-risking the project. This is ensuring the project is going to be viewed by the business and by the customer as a success in a day and time when, in the past, people were loath to make any changes, or loath to engage in a project like this. Today, these projects are happening all the time. And I'll say one other thing. They also level the playing field, because in the past, the huge risk and the huge amount of effort that was involved doing something like this was really only possible for the largest companies. We're talking about health insurance, right, or health care companies. For companies like Kaiser, for example, they had the hundreds of thousands of staff to engage in something like this. But the smaller providers with, you say a tenth or even 100th the size of Kaiser had no budget or hope of a good ROI. Today they do. So that's my perspective on it, Mike.
No, that's great. I think that the key word there, de-risking, right? Any technology implementation, inherently has an amount of risk. And, these approaches and kind of the evolutions, the outcomes that we can do with generative AI really does de-risk. So a key part of, enabling the benefits, though, is it's not just applying AI in our automation platform, right? So there's kind of a few key areas, right? Certainly, as a communications provider, IntelliPure is enabling multiple channels, be it phone, be it chat, be it SMS, email, etc., or even triggering automation, we'll call it workflows from different systems via an API. But the idea is our automation platform is engaging with those channels. It's aware contextually of those channels, and what we mean by that is if I got a notification and an SMS, and then I asked the question via that SMS, and then I picked up the phone, being contextually aware of that cross-channel experience. an orchestration platform with, what our automation platform does is orchestrate those communications. And really what that orchestration means is we understand the question, the inquiry. So we understand that intent, the natural language understanding. We are going to be dipping into the customer's data systems, be it a CRM, be it a knowledge-based document in a PDF, be it a knowledge base, whatever those information sources are needed to answer the question or the inquiry, to attempt to resolve it and to automate it completely. And then if needed, we would hand off to a human agent via a contact center or a UC worker. And of course, it's critical with those handoffs, and I alluded to examples earlier, that you pass over that context. So what does that context mean? That we should provide, not only their record, so like if it pops into a CRM, hey, here's a record, but here's what they asked about. They called about their bill, it was $20 higher. Think about that experience from a CX standpoint. The agent, instead of starting from scratch, then looking at the bill and saying, oh yeah, I see it's $20 higher, and going through all these steps. With that handoff with automation, if it's done right, it should be as seamlessly as we ask the question in the automation stack. Then it comes to the agent. The agent would say, thank you, Mike, for calling. Let me look at your bill. I see you're asking that it's a little higher this month. Okay, I see. You ordered 2 movies, right? Oh yeah, the kids that had a sleepover and they ordered a couple of movies, right? It can cut that handle time down for the agent as well if you apply the automation up front correctly and pass the context down, right? But applying automation, I guess the key points are, being channel aware. Orchestration is going to require tapping into customer information. Now with generative AI and data practices we can apply, that data can be in PDF documents, can be available via API to a CRM, or anything in between. And so we are able to tap into a lot of different data sources. And then, of course, attempting to resolve the customer inquiry or patient inquiry or member inquiry, whatever it might be. And then, if needed, pass over seamlessly that context to a human being. Anything to add here, Eric?
Well, I think the slide is, there's a lot of information on this slide. So the only thing I would add to make the point even more crisp is that as a customer today and as a business today, we're trying to manage a lot of different channels of communication, right? Messages in email and chat, messages from our employees and customers, cell phones when they're texting. We might have, 50 or 100 different applications that we're subscribing to in the cloud to run our business. Working with an orchestration platform, what that means is what it says. Picture the conductor, making the orchestra perform at its highest and best use. That's what we're talking about doing with intelligent automation.
Yeah, no, great. And I think part of that is interesting. It kind of talks about, where it fits to. So one of the things that, people might be thinking as they talk to all the different vendors, the interesting thing is that you have the UC platforms, you have the contact center platforms, and everyone out there is looking to, have slides and content and outreach and about AI and applying AI and all these different topics. And so one of the areas that we hear a lot when we're talking to customers is, well, I've got some, stuff that comes with my contact center. I can do an IVR, maybe I can do some directed speech. And certainly that capability does come there. But if you think about putting AI in front of the contact center at the point of communication, it's pretty powerful. And so some key things there is, if we apply automation at the front end when a call's coming in, or you get an SMS, before any of those things come to an enterprise worker or a contact center, or you're bringing it down to your contact center platforms, if we're applying automation there, it provides a whole nother level of scale, right? Think about any kind of business that's seasonal, be it retail, utilities that have power outages and spikes, right? There's a lot that they have to manage from a capacity standpoint, and having that automation in the cloud before these other systems provides a whole nother level of scale and fault tolerances. And the other key piece is if you're doing the automation and call it intelligent routing in front with a communication platform like IntelliPeer, it really reduces the functionality you need from your contact center system. Meaning you need your contact center system for routing to an agent, right? Skills-based routing, workforce management, workforce optimization, reporting on all those things. But then it becomes kind of a commodity, right? It's trading my Chevy truck for my Ford truck, and you can implement switching those contact center systems if you're on premise, going to a cloud one or going from one cloud provider to another. It really reduces the complexity. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, and you're not tied to one particular contact center vendor or the other. And lastly, which is probably the most important, right? In this example of changing out your contact center platforms, kind of all do the same thing. The idea is to route those interactions to the right human agent. Make sure you can manage those human agents with that contact center load in terms of calls, chats, etc. And most of the functionality is 80% the same, right? So going through a 6 to 12 month, or even if it's 3 months implementation effort on changing out one contact center platform to another isn't really going to impact your business in a meaningful way. Applying automation and focusing on what we can automate versus trying to make the agent's job easier is going to have a bigger impact to your customers, to your patients, and to your ROI and bottom line. So just one of the areas as we deal with customers and talking about it, applying the automation in front of these other platforms is pretty powerful. And it has a lot of different benefits, let alone really focus on the CX and the ROI components of doing that. Anything to add here, Eric?
Just that's an extremely valid point, and so many of our customers are using, not just a contact center vendor, but they're using, 4 or 5 service platform integrations to that contact center, and I'm really excited to see the transformation that they can accomplish with AI on the front end in the cloud, on the phone service itself. And I think that's to simplify, the consumption model of this is a consumption model that's completely different, and it's very cost effective, and not just cost effective, but productive.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about sample ROIs here and a little bit around that as well. One last topic, kind of around the where to fit into the enterprise and how it works. Just one thing about our managed services approach at IntelliPeer, we kind of have what I call your Mad Lib adventure, right? Choose your own adventure. We can build it for you. We can build it together, meaning maybe we build the first use cases and hand them off. And then we have customers build it themselves. We actually, one of our largest customers, implements a lot of their own flows. Just one caveat there, our managed services is required using generative AI in some of those use cases here out the door, but we're very collaborative in terms of the approach to implement this. Clearly any implementation does require, customer knowledge and resources. So in this chapter, we've kind of talked about, where and how AI fits into the enterprise. Now we're going to transition into talking about, where to start and determining what to automate, right? Because that's the most important thing, right? This all sounds great, but where do we start and how do you have the most impact to your enterprise? So it seems pretty straightforward, but obviously where we want to apply AI or any kind of technology is where the least amount of effort and risk can have the most amount of outcome, right? And outcomes in these cases can be reduction in agent costs. It can be increase in maybe leads coming in. It can be more efficient routing of interactions. The success criteria obviously would vary depending on that. And then obviously applying any kind of automation we need to measure the results. Not only the automated results like self-service rates and things like that, but also CX, right? How do we tie it to the CSAT surveys, NPS surveys, et cetera? So we wanted to walk through an example. And, Eric, earlier you had referred to kind of the accessibility of this technology. We'll call it previously, Fortune 100, 500, were really the companies that could invest largely in these technologies and experience the largest impacts. But here's an example, just some numbers around a sample company that has 500,000 inbound calls a year, with some onshore agents making, $20 an hour. And if you would say about applying 10% automation, so improving or automating 10% of those interactions, 50,000 calls, that's a savings of, roughly $160,000 a year. You increase that 5x, that becomes $800,000. So, and it really, with the advents and advances with conversational AI and generative AI, it really expands where the rate of automation that can be achieved can be 50, 60, 70, 80%. The other key thing, and you alluded a little bit to the model, right? The annual agent cost for an onshore agent, again, making $20 an hour with, accounting for benefits, equipment, et cetera, that rounds up roughly to $54,000 a year. Maybe it's an offshore agent, maybe that's more like $30,000, depending on where you have it, if it's a BPO, et cetera. An IntelliPure Smart Agent, which is in essence one automation conversation at a time that's available 24/7. The annual cost of that is $9,000. So from an order of magnitude, not only are we able to automate, but be able to, that smart agent that can handle interactions 24/7 versus an 8-hour shift, the ROI, not only the annual cost, but the cost of training and all those things, the ROI really starts to grow exponentially when you think about all the different use cases and things we can apply. So, automation needs to be implemented and thought thoughtfully through in terms of what those benefits are. Clearly, they need to be measured. But what we're seeing is we're working with our customers, again, ROIs that break even within 90 days, getting to 2 to 3x savings within the first 6 to 12 months, and then 4 to 5, 6x savings in year 2. So it starts to compound and grow as you go along. So it's pretty powerful. And one of the things we work with customers very closely is figuring out where to apply that automation. So how we do that, one of the things that we're do with customers and prospects is what we call an intent study. In essence, it's a study of understanding why people contact an organization. An example of how we would do that is standing up a flow that says, "Thank you for calling, how can I help you?" Or that's in front of an enterprise contact center, whether it's in front of branches on a bank, sales locations. We understand what that intent is, and we do post-processing analysis to determine the intent. And that intent data allows us to say, hey, here's all the reasons people are calling or chatting, or whatever the case might be. And here's where we think that the opportunity is in terms of the things that have the highest impact, the lowest effort to implement, and the biggest bang for the dollar. So one of the things we would do is we would have an analysis that says, hey, X% of calls or inquiries are of these types. This is where we should start. And here's the ROI associated to that. So this is a key piece, right? And this is, we'll call it step 1 to this process of identifying, hey, what are those use cases or applications of AI that we should start with first to get the most benefit, to get to that self-funding state, multiples of ROI as quickly as possible. So an intent study is a common way that we're doing that. Not to get too technical in this first conversation here today, there's a couple different ways to do it. The example I gave was what we call an active example, leveraging SmartFlow, where we actually ask, how may I help you? We get that intent and we route that call to the agent to wherever it needs to do. We do this in a sampling strategy. Maybe we'd sample 5% of calls over a 2-week period. Another way that we do it is passively, where we can have the call enter our environment. We record the call, and then we do some post-processing of the speech to text transactions there. The whole idea is to identify the intents and why people are calling. And the goal here is that, we probably set up the intent study over a couple week period. We're getting the data, we're categorizing intents and providing a readout of that, of those intents. And then, work together with customers and partners to determine where we should automate first. And again, this has been pretty powerful. We've been working with customers across all the different verticals on this. And even for some reason, if the automation project is something that's going to be planning for next year, this data can also inform maybe routing decisions, right, in the contact center. And there's always a learning, right? A lot of times we might hear a customer says, oh, we've got CRM disposition data, or we've got a call, analytics platform that's telling us. I will say in all the cases, the learnings that come from the intent study are richer in the results that you get. If you think about CRM disposition codes, that's only as good as the humans entering it in. If you got 20 things they're picking from, they're going to pick from the first 5. Even if you pick from 7, it's still not going to be as good as this data. So the intent study is beneficial as a good way to inform where to start on automation, but also where to go with other things like routing and other pieces. Eric, anything to add and kind of thoughts on the intent study approach to identifying where to start?
Well, this is a great component, and at BTI we use the same sort of approach in putting together project scopes and budgets, and it's brilliant. I think your approach is very beneficial to our customers, and we look forward to doing more of them.
Yeah, and we've got a QR code here where you can kind of request more information. This gets sent out with the packets and information with the webinar recordings as well, as a getting started approach here. So before we kind of wrap up and open up for questions, maybe Eric, you want to give a quick commercial on BTI for the group, and then we'll take questions.
Sure. BTI is we're an integrator, so we integrate computer systems, communication systems, and physical security systems for our customers. We started in 1985. Our goal is to deliver the foremost level of technical quality that can be delivered reliably for our customers' budget. And we think budget is a very important concern, because from our viewpoint, the more budget that is wasted, the less budget there is available to deliver more quality. So we try to sit on the same side of the table with our customers and help them spend their money wisely. And we would be delighted to engage with any of you to discuss your overall requirements and to assist in integrating the IntelliPeer solution with your existing systems and discover with you the route that gets you to the end product that you want in the shortest amount of time and the highest level of quality for the least amount of budget.
Great. I'll talk a little bit about IntelliPeer, obviously some of the capabilities we've been talking about through the webinar here, but we're really focused on simplifying communications automation for enterprises and contact centers, all about providing ROI and CX, right? And obviously anything around that is going to be powered by data, AI, and analytics. And as you can probably glean from our conversation today, time to value and the outcomes that we're delivering are key, right? And that's really kind of where we apply our success, right? Leveraging things like the intent study to educate us where to start, jointly leveraging successes and information from our other implementations. All right, so obviously we covered a lot of today around establish kind of the framework around automation and AI. We talked about where AI can fit into the enterprise, and then we wrapped up here talking about where AI, how to get started applying AI for your organization. So we'll open it up for questions at this time. I can share some questions that we commonly get from customers as well as we're embarking on these journeys.
Thanks, Mike and Eric. This is Vanessa. We do have a few questions. First, a question regarding implementation from Bill. Can you explain in layman's terms why generative AI is 5 times faster to implement than other forms?
Yeah, certainly. So if you break kind of generative AI into its two key pieces, at least how we look at it, the first of it is understanding. So if you think about, something, let's say you call an agent and you're saying, hey, I need to add a vehicle to my policy, but I also want to check out your homeowner bundle rates. Traditional technologies, you would have to build out models and understanding to understand those two different intents and make sure that you can remember that, oh, I did the first question, but I need to do the second question. With generative AI, it can understand naturally that there are those two pieces, and it really reduces the time for the understanding component of putting that together. Because part of the power of generative AI is it's very good at predicting what people are going to say and understanding what those things are. The other part of what it is, a lot of the questions, if you think about a payment and a transaction that's linear, you've got to map out all those different steps. With generative AI, we can say, here's the question, here's the answer set, and it is able to glean those two things together and facilitate a more dynamic dialogue. So the net of it is you have to program less with leveraging generative AI and build in versus more scripting and other things you had to use with some of the traditional technologies. So it's the ability to get to those understanding and answer points faster. That's really the power of that. So hopefully that answers the question.
Sharon's question is a great follow-up to that. What's involved in preparing to do an intent study?
Yeah, so not a lot, right? It's really understanding what's the call set that we want to sample. Is it customer service? Is this the branches? So typically we're identifying what numbers we pick. Do we want to sample 5% of calls over a 2-week period? We identify whether we do that active approach where we ask how may I help you, or passive, and then we do the study. It literally is pretty quick to set up to do the study, and 2 weeks figure for data collection. So 1 week to kind of plan and execute, 2 weeks to do the collection, and then we're reading out the data from there. So it's not a heavy lift versus the value that it provides.
Great, that answered another question we had from Dave about the timeframes. And lastly, a question from Ryan. Can this be used for outbound sales, lead generation campaigns, such as insurance policy renewals?
100%, right? This is I would say that's one of the biggest kind of advents that's coming with generative AI is typically anything that was sales or lead, or, needed, a human being, right? But if you think about a big part of a renewal, if using an insurance policy as an example, you got to get a hold of people, see if they want to renew, and then maybe you need to get them to a licensed agent. So that first, we'll call it qualification part of the conversation, says, hey, we see your policies for renewal. Would you like to renew for another 6 months, 12 months, whatever the case might be? If for simple examples, we could automate that end to end. If they're saying, hey, I want to look at maybe bundling in with my homeowner's policy, maybe that's a scenario we would hand off to a human agent, but really being able to apply it to those outbound cases, right? Certainly the things like TCPA and other pieces that come into the mix have to be, applied just like you would with a human being. But what we're really seeing the expansion of being able to do that more, thinking anything that kind of has a qualification sales step, trying to get somebody to show up for an appointment, trying to get, somebody to renew, update their credit card information if it's been expired, a lot of outbound use cases that can be applied for automation.
Great, thanks, Mike. I give the floor back to you.
Great. Well, those were great questions. Again, we appreciate everybody's time today. And hopefully we look forward to partnering with BTI and working with some of the folks on the call today.